Well, good afternoon and welcome to a live edition of Hit Me Again, episode 40 of the show. Hard to believe I've been doing that this long. Colton Molesky is obviously not here, my co-host for this, and so we've got a wonderful guest host here this week, Mr. Stephen Strom of the Strom Sports Show. You can also hear him on Get Up Minnesota during the week as well. So you can hear his voice in a lot of different spots here in the state of Minnesota. Stephen, my man, good to have you on the show. How's it going?
Listen, man, anytime you hit me up and you're like, hey, I got to fill in. Hey, you need to come on here. You know, I'm always there for you. I love kicking it with you. There's a lot to get into, a lot of great stories that are going on. Some not so much Gopher hoops. I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit, man. But I hope everything is well with you, and it's a pleasure to be on with you today.
Yeah, just continuing to cruise. We're already in March somehow, so I have no idea.
Crazy,
unreal. Yet here we find ourselves. A little bit later this month is going to be a fun time for a lot of college basketball teams with the NCAA Tournament. Gopher men's basketball, however, probably not going to be one of the teams that is dancing after yet another just head-scratching loss to Nebraska, I believe it was, and the game, frankly, was not as close as the score indicates. And so you've got a Gopher team that is decent at home, 13-3. They are winless on the road somehow. What has gone wrong with this season that has led to just this absolute Jekyll and Hyde between home and road?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that really stick out to me. And number one, and we make these, you know, I'm not trying to defend Richard Pitino or anything like that, but some of the numbers that I looked up here before this are staggering. And some of you have to account this season for the injuries. Like, you knew that there was going to be some odd stuff, some quirky stuff going on with COVID and certain things that aren't going to be the same. But one thing that every team experiences is injuries. And for the Gophers, they had two really big hits this year with Liam Robbins. He's still a game time decision for playing Penn State. He's been not 100%, and he is clearly the number two guy on this team. And when Liam Robbins is playing well, this Gopher team is a completely different team. He's an anchor defensively. He can stretch the floor offensively. He's a great mind offensively. He's a huge part of this team. And the fact that the Gophers haven't had him at 100% for, I think, a couple of months here. I'm talking like maybe the Iowa game on Christmas Day. He has battled the entire year with this injury and you know, foul trouble is another thing with him. And then Gabe Kausher, as much as Gabe Kausher has struggled, and you know, he, if you were to tell me that Gabe Kausher, and I have the number for you, if you were to tell me that Gabe Kausher would be 27 for 110 this year, I mean, 27 for 100, you cannot make that up. And that's not on the head coach. Like, there are certain things that I understand Pitino hasn't done particularly well, but two things here are the injuries and just the play. I mean, Gabe Kausher, who part of the injury, you know, he gets hurt, he breaks his finger. As much as he struggled, he's still a great perimeter defender. He's still a guy that understands this offense. And I just feel bad for the kid because, you know, I think you can run 10 seasons of Gabe Kausher. You're never going to get a Gabe Kausher that goes 27 for 110, 24%. So I just think a combination of the injuries and certain players have just not stepped up. Booth Gotch, another one of those guys, that the transfer from Utah, the Pac-10 to the Big Ten, like, there is a huge difference, and some guys can't make the jump. And for Booth Gotch, he has not been able to make the jump. His numbers are down except from rebounds in every category, and he just looks outmatched. So I just think a combination of the injuries and certain guys just have not stepped up to the plate.
So now the question becomes, with this season looking more and more like it's totally lost, where do we go from here? I mean, there have been some guys who certainly have contributed this season despite the overall win-loss record. Like, what do the Gophers need to do, you know, in the off season to kind of get back towards that top echelon of the Big Ten heading into next year?
Well, number one, they've got to get better perimeter outside shooting. Right now, Seth, they ranked 333rd in the country in three-point percentage at 28.9%. I was coming heavy with numbers. I was ready for this. 28.9%. I don't care what team you are. I don't care who you're throwing out on the floor. In this day and age and the way that basketball is being played, if that is your percentage, you are not going to win a lot of games. They're also only averaging 7.3 mades per game. It's 166 in the country. I think it's clear they've got to get players that can shoot from the outside. If you think about this team, Marcus Carr he's not a shooter. He's a scorer, but he's not necessarily a shooter. Trey Williams, he's come onto the scene. He's not necessarily a shooter. There's not like a bred shooter on this team other than Gabe Kousher, and he struggled a lot. So I think, number one, you need to address the outside shooting. They've got to get some guys in here that can shoot a high clip, a high 30, 35 and up kind of clip, because you're just not going to win games when you're playing teams like Iowa that can score 80 points in a blink. Michigan, like these teams that you're trying to compete with, if you're not able to shoot the ball from the outside, you're not going to win a lot of games. And I think that's where it starts for Pitino and this entire Gopher crew. They got to be able to shoot the ball from the outside. And I think that's a part of the reason why they've struggled so much.
You mentioned Richard Pitino. I'm glad you did, because that seems like a logical spot to head next. The rumors are out there, and there are various reports that he is going to be allowed to continue to finish out the season and then is going to be gone. Honestly, at this point, with the way that this team has performed this year, that's probably the best way to go. Do you agree with that call, if that is indeed what happens to Pitino? And is there anybody out there in the early part of the hiring process that would seem like a natural fit?
All right, so a two-part question there. So number one, do I think Richard Pitino deserves to be canned? Yes and no. I'm going to give you yes and no. I'll give you the yes. The yes is, you look at the overall record. He's 54 and 146 in conference play since he took over in 2013. If his last name isn't Pitino, I'm not sure if he's still here. He only has 2 NCAA berths. He's won 1 game against Louisville a couple years ago. That was Coffey's team. Since 2018, his team's win percentage is 27% in the regular season after the calendar turns to February and March. And, I think that when you look at this season and how they were ranked in the top 15 in January, and by the end of February, they're a lock for the NIT. I don't think that is the guy that you need in year. What are we in? I mean, 2013, we're in 2021. Like this isn't the trajectory. It's been too much of this, Seth, for me to feel comfortable, right? Like there's a certain point, especially in college, that you need to have a coach. If he's in his 4th, 5th year, if it's not going like this, then you might necessarily have to make a change. On the other hand, this was a team coming into this year. I don't know if you know where they were projected. Do you know where the Golden Gophers were projected in the Big Ten this year going into the season? If you had to guess, out of 13 teams.
Oh boy, I would have to say probably, I'll just go 7th. I'll split the difference.
10. They were ranked. They were predicted to finish 10th out of 13. So I think also we need to put into perspective that this team coming into this year, there wasn't a ton of expectations, and this is the problem with fans and how we react. Yeah, the Gophers were not expected to be in the hunt for an NCAA tournament at-large bid. They weren't. Let's just be honest. The way the Big Ten is, I mean, it is stacked, Seth. The bet shouldn't be going into March Madness. Is it Michigan? Is it Ohio State? It should be. Is it the Big Ten or the field? Who are you taking at this point? But as far as, the expectations go, because they were exceeded, because they had wins against Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan. I mean, look at Michigan. They beat Michigan. The fact that they had those 3 wins, I think we all kind of get hung up in, all right, well, now we should continue this success. And I understand that there is a huge frustration how this went from top 15 to NIT. But at the same time, you could definitely argue in January, Richard Pitino may have been in talks about coach of the year. Like, let's be honest, like because of those wins. So I think if this team was projected to be, within the top of the Big Ten and this were to happen, then I would think 100%. But because of the expectation coming into this season, it's a little bit more hard for me when I take a step back, look at the injuries, look at the schedule, look at how this is played out. It's harder for me to unequivocally say Richard Pitino should be fired.
Let's switch gears here to a little Vikings talk, but more so I just want to look at some of the recent quarterback chatter that's happened in the NFL. There's been some trades already this offseason. There are more that could happen, couldn't happen. So we'll have to kind of wait and see on some of those guys. But I have a new running joke with Vikings Twitter with it has been blank number of days since a workplace accident. And I just change it to it has been blank number of days, and it usually doesn't go more than one or two, that there's been a Vikings Twitter fight in regards to Kirk Cousins. And it seems like we're at that point again. There's been some rumors that Cousins may be dealt to somebody. San Francisco seems to be a popular name that always pops up every offseason.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to have peace, or is this just going to be a constant fight between pro Kirk Cousins, anti Kirk Cousins? Are these forces just to steal the line from the Dark Knight? Are these two sides of the argument just destined to do this forever?
Yeah, I mean they just are. First of all, I don't think as much as we want to sit here and try to play, oh well, Cousins is, if he gets traded, he's gonna end up. I just don't think he's getting traded. I think that ship has sailed. To be completely honest with you, I think it will be telling. I'm more interested in what they do in the draft than anything. Like, are they going to pick a quarterback? How are they going to play this out? But look, man, I don't expect Kirk Cousins to be anywhere. I think he's going to be the week one starter. Everyone that I've talked to that's kind of plugged in there, they say the same thing. It's just all smoke and mirrors. I mean, it would have happened already. Like, I don't understand. I go into it, I'm expecting Kirk Cousins to be the starter week one. I don't necessarily agree with the contract extension that he got before the season. But again, you look at that year, they go and beat the Saints. They have a really nice year at 10-6. I think he has 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. What are you going to do? He comes to your office and says, well, listen, I'm on a 1-year deal. I want to be extended. Here's my numbers. Here's what I did. What do you do if you're Spielman? Do you tell him, no, you're playing on a 1-year deal, and then you have this kind of, monkey on your back the entire year? It was really tricky. The worst thing to happen for the Vikings, I thought, was to win that game against the Saints, because it kept Zimmer for another year and got him extended, and it got Cousins an extension too, and Spielman. So whether you like it or not, I think Cousins is there, and I think until he is moved on, and he's not going to get extended past that 2-year threshold, until that day occurs, I think we still will have that, because I see it every day on Twitter. I mean, it's ridiculous, Seth.
Yeah, it's just never ending.
Exhausting.
You can try to mute the words Kirk Cousins. It doesn't help, because people still find a way to sneak things into the woodwork. So it's just exhausting. One other NFL note I wanted to throw your way. So the trades that we've seen, Matt Stafford for Jared Goff, and Carson Wentz going to Indy. So you've got Stafford at the Rams. You've got Goff with the Lions, and you have Carson Wentz now with Indianapolis. So the answer to the question I'm about to ask you may seem pretty straightforward, may seem pretty easy, but maybe not. Which of those quarterbacks of those three, Stafford, Goff, and Wentz, is set up to personally succeed the best? Not necessarily wins and losses. Which of those quarterbacks went to the best spot for them to personally succeed?
Yeah, I think it's undoubtedly, I think that it's Carson Wentz. Just looking at the roster that he's going to, he's inheriting a comfort level. When you are coming off a season like Carson Wentz has had these last couple of seasons and been pretty much ousted out of Philly, you look for comfort. Obviously, he's not confident. There's been articles about that. And when you're not confident, you search for comfortability. And that comfortability for him is Indianapolis, and that's Frank Wright. Like he's worked with this guy before. I think there's definitely a trust level there, and I think the roster that he's going to, Seth, just think about this: Phillip Rivers. I'm not a huge Phillip Rivers guy. 1 year, $25 million last year, ridiculous. They went 11-5 or 10-6 or whatever it was. I mean, you input, I think, Carson Wentz. I think it's an upgrade, right? You have a mobility aspect, you have a younger aspect, you have a better arm. I mean, just from, you don't have to be a genius to kind of put 2 and 2 together. You upgrade at quarterback. You had 10, 11 wins last year. You would think that you're going to get that and maybe a little bit more. I think for Carson Wentz, it's a great move. A huge problem about why his downfall occurred was injuries. Why was he getting injured? Because he wasn't able to have a decent offensive line to protect him. He's going to one of the best offensive lines in the entire league. So I think you combine that, you parlay it with guys like, Jonathan Taylor. You've got different weapons, Paris Campbell, Pittman, Hilton. Like, you have some pieces there that you can work with. But another thing is the division. I mean, you assume that Watson's going to be out of there. Jacksonville's in a rebuild. They're going to get Trevor Lawrence. The only team that you're really battling with is probably Tennessee. I think that Carson Wentz is definitely in the best spot. And I'm really happy for him, to be honest with you, because this dude was an MVP candidate just a couple of years ago. He tears his ACL. Foles takes over, wins the Super Bowl. But I just think ultimately that for Carson Wentz, it was a life-saving change for him. It was a career-changing trade for him, and I'm excited to see what he does in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think you're right on there. In terms of like team wins, I think Stafford probably has the best chance. But then,
the division scares me though out there in the NFC West. The Cardinals just got J.J. Watt. They're going to be back, even though they sort of tailed out towards the end of the year with Kyler Murray. You got to look at Seattle. I mean, what's going on with Wilson? That division is stacked, and I'm forgetting one team. It's the Rams, it's the Seahawks, it's the Cardinals, and I'm forgetting one team. Who is it?
Oh yeah, that other team that went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and still has some pieces, and Kyle Shanahan, the San Francisco 49ers.
How can we forget about them? So that's a great division too, Seth. So I don't necessarily, Stafford, to me, man, we've seen Stafford. I think I said it when I saw the trade, man. I think that it is a huge risk for Stafford to go there, because you're no longer in that Detroit shell where you can play well and you can lose, and you have supporters saying, oh man, save Stafford, free Stafford. You're free. If you don't put up numbers, I just think that ultimately we're going to look at Stafford's career a little bit more differently. Like, was it Stafford or was it the Lions? Because if he goes here and doesn't win and struggles on a winning team with a fantastic coach and defense, what's the legacy of him too? I think that Wentz is playing with house money compared to Stafford at that point in their career.
Okay. Let's talk some Major League Baseball. Spring training is underway. The Minnesota Twins out to try to tackle the American League Central yet again, but the Chicago White Sox certainly made some noise in the offseason to where they are the favorites, at least from the lines that I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, they're the favorite. Yep.
Favorites to win the American League Central. So before we talk about that specifically, let's just recap what we saw from the Twins in the offseason. They shored up the bullpen. They made a couple of veteran signings to improve the team as well. What do you think of the Twins heading into the 2021 season?
I feel good. I don't feel great about them winning the division. I think that the White Sox have made that jump that we all have sort of anticipated. We thought it was going to be a little bit later, maybe 2023, but they have made it very clear. They went out this season and had a great offseason, adding a bunch of depth, Hendricks, Lance Lynn. I mean, they are in and they're ready to compete for a World Series, and they're deservingly so, I think, to be the favorite in the AL Central. I think that the Twins get to the playoffs. I don't think they win the division. I still think, Sethy boy, that I'm not comfortable with this pitching rotation. When I look at it up and down, Berrios, Maeda, good. And then after that, 38-year-old J.A. Happ, Michael Pineda, I don't know what I'm getting from. And then Matt Shoemaker. What's the deal with Odorizzi? I think that's a huge thing that we don't know yet. Jake Odorizzi, who has come off, not last year, but the year before that, an all-star type of season, Twins missed him. Like, the Twins miss him a lot. Here's ultimately what I think and my thought on the Twins. I think you have a bunch of players on this team. It feels like that you've squeezed the last ounce of ability from. Meaning, how much more can you get from Nelson Cruz? How much more can you get from a guy like J.A. Happ, right? Like, certain guys, Berrios, Buxton, Kepler, like those guys can still get better. But I think the majority of this roster, you've overachieved. Like, is Mitch Garver going to hit 30 home runs like he did 2 years ago? You have to look at these players and these rosters. let's be honest, like the Twins don't have a bunch of household names. The player development has been fantastic, but when you look at the year they had 2 years ago when they had 5 guys that hit over 30 home runs, it feels a lot like they may have sort of peaked. I don't know how much better guys like Garver can get, Cruz at his age, Mieta even. Like Mieta was a huge surprise. Like Mieta came over here, we were like, all right, he's going to be a good second or third pitcher. He finished, behind Bieber in the AL Cy Young Award. I mean, he was fantastic, Seth.
Yeah.
So it scares me about this team. They're sort of due, I feel like, for a down year. But I do think they ultimately finish second. I think they get a wild card spot. But I think their over-unders at 89.5. I would say just under that.
Okay. Let's just go through the divisions. We'll play favorite or field with the rest of the divisions in baseball. So you got the American League East. Yankees are the favorite at minus 190. Then it's Tampa Bay Rays plus 368. Toronto Blue Jays plus 370. Boston.
Yeah, that's the play right there, by the way.
But oh, really?
I'll let you finish. Yeah, that's the play, but I'll let you finish.
Boston plus 2,000. And the Baltimore Orioles are distantly behind at plus 5,600. So they're close. They're close.
You're telling me there's a chance.
Favorite or field for the American League East?
Well, first of all, I love Toronto going into this year. I think that they are what was the odd? Did you say plus 5 something?
For
Toronto.
They're right here. They're plus 370.
Plus 370. I think that's like a decent play. I really like Toronto this year. I think that they added a bunch in the offseason. I think they're a legit threat. They've got a lot of young prospects. They've got a lot of young talent on that team. They remind me of what Chicago was with the White Sox a year ago, where you're kind of just waiting for them to explode. Look, the Yankees are the Yankees. I still think they win that division, but I think a juicy play would be to play the Blue Jays. Those 3 teams, I mean, I think that it's going to be a battle. I really do think I would actually, if I had to pick the order, Seth, I would probably go Yankees, Blue Jays, and then Rays. I think the Rays have a dip off because of certain guys that they've let go of. Blake Snell is gone. Still have good pitching, great manager, a great, honestly, culture there. They just win with just as little amount of money as possible. I would say the order, though, I would go Yankees, Blue Jays, and then Rays, and then everyone else. So that's kind of my feel for the AL East.
AL Central, I'll just go through the odds that I have, and I don't know. I'm hoping that these are reputable, but we touched on it already that the Twins probably slot in at second as they have it. The White Sox are the favorite at minus 146. Twins second at plus 177. Cleveland is distantly back at plus 717. Then you got Detroit at plus 39.33. And the Kansas City Royals, they get a chance. Plus 43.33 for them. So
I think it's so comical, by the way, that like we actually put out odds for teams like Detroit and Kansas City. Like it's one thing to put it out for like a 16-game slate like the NFL, like where you can say, all right, maybe if there's some injuries somehow, some way, like you take a flyer on the Washington football team last year. We're talking about 162 games. Like, come on now. It should be more than that at that point. But no, I think that Chicago wins the division. I think the Twins are right behind them. But ultimately, I am very weary of the Twins, Seth. I don't want to understate that. I'm very I just don't know. I want to feel good about them, but I do sort of look at the team, and I do think that they have sort of peaked in a way. But I'll go Chicago, followed by the Twins, and then everyone else.
Yeah, I agree there. Okay, American League West, Oakland is at plus 123. Houston plus 157, then the Angels plus 383. Seattle is plus 22.33, and the Rangers are plus 43.33. So you've got Oakland, Houston, and the Angels, and then friends in the American League West.
Not going to sit here and try to flex that I know a lot about the AL West. I do not. I would probably lean towards the Athletics. They are the favorite. Interested to see what the Angels do with Trout. But for the most part, I don't know a ton about the division, but I would probably lean towards the team that I've been most consistent with in that division, and that's been the Oakland A's.
Okay. Final one that I'll ask you about, just because I'm so curious because of all the moves that happened in the division, the National League West. Here are the odds. The Dodgers are minus 260. San Diego is plus 203. And then the Giants are 43-33 plus 43-33. Colorado and Arizona plus 5,000.
Yeah.
So it seems like Dodgers or bust for the West.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought that the Padres would get a little bit more love than that. I thought they would maybe be at plus 180. I didn't know they were going to touch the 200s. That's something to keep an eye on. I think that Toronto and San Diego have been the winners of this offseason, and I think the Dodgers are still the best team in the league. I still would be surprised if they didn't win the division, but I do think it's something worth looking at. Padres are all in, man. The Padres are going to be a really fun team to follow. It's unfortunate that they're on the West Coast, so we're not going to be able to watch a ton of their games. But I think that division is super interesting. I think we can see both of those teams make a postseason push. Those are two really fun teams to keep an eye out on. And both in, obviously, California, you got your LA Dodgers, you got your San Diego Padres. I think that that's a really interesting division with two just heavy hitters, man. But I would probably lean towards the LA Dodgers.
Okay. Let's finish just with a little NCAA tournament chatter. I'm not sure how much you've had to kind of look at where we're at with the field. I haven't had a whole heck of a lot of time, obviously, with other stuff I've got going on to look at that. But Duke and Michigan State, they are really fighting to try to get back into the field. So we could see some new teams get a chance to grace the March Madness insanity that we love. So I'll just ask you this to kind of wrap up for today. Any teams that you really like as we head down the stretch towards the NCAA tournament?
First, to answer your question, I've been into college basketball. Really fun season, I think, for the lack of fans, and that's part of the reason why I love college basketball. It's been kind of, it's been unfortunate that we haven't had that environment in there, but there's certain teams that are allowing for that, and we see that there's going to be fans in the NCAA tournament, which is awesome. Man, Seth, I'll be honest with you. I think that there is a significant drop-off from one team and everyone else, and that's the Michigan Wolverines. What they are able to do on a night-in, night-out basis, just watching these last couple of weeks, them going into the Nut House and beating Ohio State, then going on the road and playing Indiana. Like, they're 7-point favorites on the road in Big Ten play. Like, they go out and they just dominate and win by double digits. They play Iowa, and they're sort of tied up at the end of the half, and they just blow the doors off of Iowa in the second half. They put together collective halves. That's what I love about this team. They're deep. Isaiah Livers, Brooks, Mike Smith leading the way. And they just have this tremendous big man in Dickinson. They're just super deep, and they're veteran-led. They've got a lot of guys that can score. And I think if I had one worry about the team, it's Isaiah Livers. I think Isaiah Livers sometimes thinks he can do more than he actually can. Maybe he can shoot the Wolverines out of a game, but I don't know. They have too many weapons, and I think that Michigan is the number one right now, and I think it's a significant drop-off. And then you have your Baylors, your Gonzagas. Gonzaga has obviously looked tremendous, but I don't know what to think of them. I watched them play Pepperdine a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how much stock I'm buying into them blowing them out by 30,
Yeah.
They have had an interesting schedule. They've played, good teams in the beginning of the year. I think there's no question that they're a Final Four team. Baylor, big game tonight against West Virginia. Whoever wins this game gets the Big 12 championship, regular season championship. They had another team that has a very versatile. But I do think that Michigan is clear favorite right now. Just a team that I love and that I'm going to ride in the NCAA tournament. I love Creighton. Like, I loved Creighton last year. I love Creighton this year. I think that last year they were really hot and people were starting to buy in on them, which I don't like. I like keeping my guy. So they had a really tough loss last week. Creighton did. So I'm happy that they're going to kind of go under the radar. They've got 5 dudes, Seth, that can just score the basketball. Starting with Marcus Zagorowski. He's one of the best guards in the country. He's had sort of a down year, but he can get hot you talk about teams that can get hot in a couple weeks span. Creighton is one of them. Mahoney, fantastic player. They have Christian Bishop, a big that can run the floor, super dynamic, super athletic. They've got a lefty shooter in Mitch Ballack. This team, coached by Doug McDermott's father, Coach McDermott does a great job with them. Defense is the issue. Like, they're going to put up 80 points. I know they will.
Right.
They got a little Iowa in them where you're going to score the basketball. But I think Creighton is definitely a team to keep an eye on. I have them going a long way. We'll see what happens with what they get for a breakdown in the bracket. But I love Creighton. I think that they're definitely another team to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, who's left standing at the end of this whole thing. So we'll continue.
Are we going to do NIT predictions for the Gophs or no? I feel bad. I mean, I don't know. Are they going to get a 1 seed?
That would be just so fitting of a team that showed so much promise and then just absolutely fell off the face of the earth.
It'd be Richard's second, though. That's 2 NIT championships. You got to ring him. Maybe that's what he presents Coyle at the end. Oh no, you're giving him the wave. He's gone.
Yeah, like good for you. NIT championships. That's something they definitely hang those rafters. Like, they're just all over Williams Arena.
That's, you got to show your recruits. But I will say, Seth, obviously mini ice. I am stoked about the Wild, man. I'm super excited. Although being out here on the East Coast, I'm catching them at like 10 o'clock at night. Super, super excited about this team, man.
Yeah, they've been the real deal. And honestly, Kirill Kaprizov continues to just dominate and do things that, rookies aren't supposed to do. But, man, Dean Evason's got 4 lines that are just absolutely dialed in right now. And you've got 2 goalies that have been pretty much they've been sensational so far this year. With you can't really fault Cam Talbot for the 5 goals because 2 of them were power play goals, and so that's nothing he can control. But this team is absolutely flying, and it's a credit to Bill Guerin and Dean Evason just continuing to push all the right buttons. And I see no reason why it can't continue.
Yeah, you know what I like about this team, and then we can wrap up here. I just like to kind of just shoot the bull with you a little bit at the end. Sure. The thing I like about this Wild team, Seth, is you look at their top 3 point leaders. It's Kaprizov, Greenway, and Eric Sinek, right? Like 23 years old, 24 years old. I think for the longest time, the Wild have been sort of waiting on these younger guys to get going. And, you look at the last couple of years, those point leaders have been Parisi and Stahl, guys that are, obviously older. Wild don't need that. The Wild need their young guys. They need Eric Sinek and Greenway and these younger dudes that we've been talking about, we've been waiting for, to take the reins and to start to be that, number 1 guy. And, for Kaprizov, he's come in, and everything that I think we've expected and we've hoped for Kaprizov has sort of come true. Yep. But for guys like Greenway and Eric Sinek, man, a couple of years ago, if you would have told me that they would make this jump, I don't know. I did not know, but it's really exciting to see that this team, the young guys are finally starting to produce.
And they've got a lot more on the way too. That's the exciting thing, is they've got young players that are performing all across the minor league levels, collegiately, and what have you, that are ready to step in and are going to be ready, next year as well. So this team is just going to be injected more and more with youth, and it's exciting considering, what we've kind of expected from this team is that they have been very veteran heavy. They'll get you into the playoffs, but you really can't expect that much more after that. With some of the guys that they have on this roster now, I have no idea where this train's going to end.
I really hope that they can get fans in there by the playoffs. So I really hope that place, the XL Energy Center, man. I've been there a couple of times. I've been there for 2 playoff games. Like it's actually 3. It's one of the greatest environments that I've been to. And every time, we watch this team this year and how different it is, I can't help to think like how awesome it would be to hear like a ruckus XL Energy Center. The fans obviously out there, they die hockey. So I hope that they can get fans in by the postseason.
Yeah, me too, man. We'll see what happens. Before we let you go, and again, thanks for filling in for this week's episode. Always fun. It's always fun. Just plug the pods so that listeners who are getting introduced to you for the first time know where they can find your other audio content.
Of course. Yeah, talknorth.com. That's the main podcast. Comes out every single Friday. We actually have Brian Billick. How about that? Brian Billick on the pod this Friday.
Oh.
I'm going to try not to get into the 98 season, Seth, but we know that's not going to happen. I have a lot to pick his brain about. That game, man. I mean, we can do a whole show on that bad boy, Gary Anderson, John Randall, Hurd, and some of the things. We'll get into it, though. But Brian Billick will join me on Friday. Talknorth.com, Spotify, iTunes, Strom Sports Show. And then I do a show probably 2 or 3 times a week. Wake Up Minnesota on minnesotasportsfan.com. Just kind of getting you guys ready for the morning at work, right? We want to make you the most educated person there. Want to get you up to date with scores, who's playing tonight, and just some takes as well. Obviously, some opinions and a little montage Monday as well that we did. So those are the places you can find me. Again, Seth, man, I appreciate you inviting me on. It's always a pleasure, and it's always a good time.
Of course, that'll do it for this week's episode of Hit Me Again. Colton will be back next week, so enjoy the sports landscape, which has given us plenty to discuss, and we will catch you again next week.